One of my most recent videos is about just making games and having fun with the learning process. The internet is full of indie game dev content that seeds you with doubt and despair, commenting on failure, hardships, and the slim chances at success. I am not blind to this reality, but hope to add a bit of nuance. Your first couple games most likely won't wow the world or make you $1 billion. But to make a good game, you need to practice making games, and you should be able to do that with a mindset that helps you enjoy the process despite any short-term failures. About a year ago, I released my second commercial game project. For all intensive purposes, the project was and is a failure. In this video, I'll recount that failure. A failure called Airstar. Truthfully, I don't consider this project to be an abject failure, and the intro is a bit theatrical. I learned a ton in the process, and I think it turned out to be a decent game, but I did set out to make a commercial project, and along with that came some goals that I failed to meet. There is always a bright side to look to, the little successes along the way, but the failure of the project is my own. I'll discuss how those failures can be defined from my initial goals, and how I approach their meaning. Per usual, let's start with a short timeline of development. The year is 2021, and I've been messing around in Unity building a prototype. You play as a frog, and you throw paper planes. It came to me in a dream. It'll be a combination of tower defense and Angry Bird style throwing/flicking, where the player has more input. A tower defense where you will be the tower. It'd been almost a year since I released my first commercial project that I had worked on over the course of 7 months. I had released some updates and done some game jams, but was looking to do a new commercial project. I had a few inspirations to look to. I'd been following Sock Pop at the time, a small collective of game developers on a tight schedule, and they had been putting out increasingly impressive projects. They would each have about 3 to 4 months to make a game, so that the 4 of them would be on a rotating schedule, releasing a new game every month for their Patreon. I set my eye on a similar timeline. I would make a game in 3 months, and I'd begin development early 2021. Believe it or not, Airstar was released in 2023. I spent about 9 months from May 2021 to January 2022 working on the game, and had gotten most of the core features and content done. On December 13th, 2021, I posted that I was very close to completing the development of the game, and had a trailer and build ready to go early January. So what happened? Well, over those 9 months, I had been working an internship, and I had also been putting more time into my first commercial game from 2020 called Bunny Hill. I subsequently got a full-time game dev job and had to move states. I released a video on TikTok about Bunny Hill and the update, and it did exceptionally well compared to any video I'd released in my life. I wanted to strike while the iron was hot and improve that game some more, now that new people were playing it. So the next couple months were filled with updating Bunny Hill yet again. After releasing the update, I'd take a short break from developing anything, as I was doing the same kind of work at my day job and getting a bit tired of sitting at the computer. The positive aspect of the whirlwind of events and the job was that I was learning a ton, and there was enough time for me to properly implement those learnings into Airstar, which was sitting on the back burner. I was mostly programming at work and was able to absorb tons of knowledge from some great people. I'd learn all about efficient saving and loading for games, among other things, and I'd begin to implement similar systems in Airstar at home. The delay was in part a blessing in disguise. The game needed some features like saving that in 2021 I had no idea how to tackle. It was finally ready to release in early 2023. From October 2021 to March 2023, I had logged 250 hours. Before I started logging my hours, from May to October, I programmed the bulk of the game logic, so I estimate that I put in at least another 350 hours. That brings us to a total of roughly 600 hours, give or take, and that equates to about 15 weeks of full-time work at 40 hours per week. 15 weeks is about 4 months, so my 3 to 4 month game target was totally and completely 100% on the money. But it took me over the course of 2 years to complete those 4 months of work. Life happens, opportunities arise, and priorities change. In addition, it always takes longer to develop your game than you think. I'm happy with the progress I made on the game within that time span. I was definitely improving and getting faster, but I largely fell short of my original expectations. The goal was to get another project out quickly, and that sure didn't happen. Let's talk business. First on our docket is what I could reasonably expect from releasing a game. A base level outcome would be breaking even on the time spent building the game. A common method of creating this estimate would be to pay myself minimum wage for all of the hours I put into the game to calculate how much I should be looking to make. In the previous section, I estimated that I spent roughly 600 hours making the game. Minimum wage can vary all over the United States, but let's go with $15 an hour. 600 hours at $15 an hour works out to $9,000. It's worth noting that this would be pre-tax and pre-Steam's cut, so I could factor in these initial costs in reverse for something like $12,000 to $13,000 in revenue if I wanted to come out with something like $9,000 on the other end. I originally priced the game at $4.99 per copy on Steam, so I'd need to sell around 2,500 copies, with no sales to break even. This may sound like a lot, but with a good game concept and well-executed marketing, it can be done. For example, my first commercial game, Bunny Hill, has sold around 3,000 copies during its lifetime. So we have our metrics, hoping for a result of $12,000 in revenue from 2.5 thousand copies, give or take, just to break even on the time spent. Let's look at some stats. Airstar to this date has sold 388 copies, for a total of $1,513 pre-tax before Steam's 30% cut and before returns. 12% of customers who buy the game return it, for a variety of reasons, but I've heard that an average return rate for Steam games tends to be 8 to 10%, so it's a bit high. I also ended up releasing the game on Android and iOS for 99 cents originally. I made $148 on Google Play and $164 on the App Store. With all of that factored in, $1,086 of pure raw profit hit my bank account. Time to go celebrate. Looking at my initial projections, I was about 8% successful in terms of revenue and 6% successful in terms of copies sold. These numbers are pretty abysmal. To figure out why this happened, I can analyze the differences between Bunny Hill and Airstar and make some generalizations. My past game experience is really all I have to go off of, so hopefully these generalizations point towards the truth. For Bunny Hill, I worked with an artist with a large following, and when it came to Airstar, I did no marketing whatsoever. For Bunny Hill, I had a unique and interesting visual style, and the gameplay loop was simple enough that with a little bit of testing, I could make it fun to play, easy to pick up, and hard to master. For Airstar, I was tackling a more niche genre, but I executed on the gameplay aspects pretty poorly. These things are not 100% concrete as they are assumptions or extractions made by myself, but I do think they carry a bit of truth. I definitely can say I didn't market the game enough. I definitely can say that I didn't playtest the game enough. And I definitely can say that these two factors may result in lower sales and less players. Most of Airstar's traffic and subsequently sales come from a YouTuber by the name of intern.gif. He happened to make 2 videos covering the game, and people would check it out from there. It was also pushed to number 55 in top paid casual games on the App Store for a day or so, for likely the same reason. I believe this accounts for at least 80% of my revenue. After I released the game and the update and wasn't having much success, I decided to experiment with it further. Around April of 2024, I made the game free on the App Store as a sort of promotion, and the downloads absolutely skyrocketed. I decided to change something about the game on the business side since I wasn't making much from it anyway, and I'd rather have people enjoying and playing the game. I'd make it permanently free on both mobile platforms with some small non-predatory in-app purchases, and lower the price on Steam to $2.99. Since then, I still don't make much money from sales or the in-app purchases, but more people have access to it, and it's good to see it being played. On the App Store, it has about 8,000 lifetime downloads. I believe that the major flaw of the game is the execution and design. If I update and tweak the game, I do believe that I could get a little bit more money out of it by making it more enjoyable to play so people will recommend it to their friends. And in addition, if more people are playing it for free on the app stores, they might be more inclined to make in-app purchases, especially if they deem the game to be worth their time to play. Let's get into gameplay. Airstar is an active tower defense game, one where the player is involved in every round fighting alongside their towers, or completely replacing them. You play as a frog that throws paper airplanes at luggage in the baggage claim. Throw planes, hit luggage, shop for upgrades, place towers, throw planes, throw more planes, you get the drill. The upgrades include unique synergies with a shop that is populated randomly. Some of the upgrades are traditional towers, but most of them pertain to the player. Fundamentally, I believe that Airstar doesn't have a flawed concept, and at times the game can be quite fun, but there are a number of things I did wrong that failed to bring the idea fully to life. I can look at the reviews of the game on Steam and the comments on the returns to diagnose Airstar's biggest problems. Firstly, most of the reviews that are negative, along with the returns, say something to the effect of not fun. Most of them comment on the pacing of the game and how difficult the first few levels are. Many of my close friends and family members who played the game also shared a similar sentiment. The game was boring, or at least hard to get into. If I were to describe the average run in terms of difficulty relating to engagement per player experience, I would draw a graph like this, where the beginning feels very hard and you don't have enough gold to buy anything. And then, as the game progresses, the levels begin to feel very easy and you don't have to do much as the towers and upgrades take over. This means that while the beginning of the game is engaging, it's not fun because you don't get to get any upgrades, and the main mechanic can be a bit tedious, especially if it's very difficult. And the end game is boring because it becomes too easy, and you don't get to play at all. Ideally, it would be quite the opposite, and much more scaled down, where the early waves introduce you to the game, and you can get some upgrades right away as a reward for completing small challenges. As the built-in difficulty of the game ramps up, you'll need to be more conscious of what you upgrade, and the later stages of the game shouldn't lose engagement. It should be difficult enough as it continues that it requires the player to be present in a fun way. The sort of pockets of downtime in Airstar make the player feel removed from the experience. Making a correction to all these mechanics requires a huge overhaul to all of the difficulty scaling, like how many bags are spawned and at what rate, as well as adjustments to the cost of items and potentially even their power. I attempted to tackle this problem in an update I released, attempting to add more upgrades for certain stages of the game, and make the first few levels easier. This update helped, but it did not fully fix the issues. I'd like to return to the game in the future to fully balance it, and hopefully see its full potential. So my game took a long time to make, didn't make much money, and I didn't appeal to many users. I failed. But that doesn't mean I should stop here. The most important part about failure is what we can learn from it, and how we define failure can help us see lessons from places we may have never looked. For example, I would say that from a business perspective, if my goal was to release a monetarily successful game, I failed. Some things I learned from that process are how to better test and scale difficulty in a game, and a better understanding of how to approach that aspect in the future, how important marketing is when it comes to games, and some avenues to achieve that, and how to better assess the time it really takes to do something, and potentially the importance of priority. From a knowledge gained perspective, the game was an absolute eye-opening success. I learned a ton about creating a game, from coding to making the entire soundtrack. I optimized art for mobile and pooled thousands of 3D objects so it could run on a phone. I learned a ton about new marketing avenues and business strategies, and most importantly, I learned more about myself. It is important to acknowledge all of the successes that lay among the wreckage of failure, and to move forward with a nuanced view that takes things evenly into account. Recognize your failure, but learn from it and grow. This is part of the mindset that I attempted to communicate in my Just Make Games video. It's not about blindly moving forward, but to take educated steps, and to understand that failure along the way is unavoidable. It is my belief that the only way forward is to have a positive outlook, because if I didn't believe I had room for growth, I'd have already proved to myself that this isn't worth trying, and that I should give up now. I learned a lot from this project, made a tiny bit of money, and in the end, I'm glad the game exists. The game still has relatively good ratings, and some people enjoy it enough to put in upwards of 20 hours. I'm hopeful that I can correct some of the business side mistakes, along with gameplay ideas in my further releases. A lot of work goes into games, and success is a tough thing to earn. If you do end up checking out the game, leave a comment letting me know what you think. I hope this was insightful. Thanks for watching.